Burden of History, the podcast. 52 years later, Haiti returns to the World Cup. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine you were born in Port-au-Prince in 1980, or in Cap Haitien in 1991, or in Miami to Haitian parents in 2003. In every single one of those lives, every birthday, every Christmas, every election, every hurricane season, there was one thing that never happened. Haiti never went back to the World Cup. Not once. Not when you were a child. Not when you became a parent yourself. Not when your own children were born. 52 years is not a sports statistic. 52 years is a lifetime. It is grandparents who passed away still telling the story of 1974 like a fairy tale, because to them, by the end, that's almost what it had become. And then, against everything the world expected of this country, it ended. This is Burden of History. I'm Dr. Rose. And today we are not really talking about football. We're talking about what it means for a nation the world keeps trying to bury to walk back onto the biggest stage on earth and remind everyone watching that it is still standing. Welcome back to Burden of History. And if this is your first time with us, welcome. This is the show where we don't just tell you what happened. We tell you what it cost, what it meant, and what the world conveniently forgets. For the first time since 1974, Haiti has qualified for the FIFA World Cup. I want you to sit with that sentence for a moment because I don't think it has fully landed yet. Not for Haiti and not for the world. This isn't a Cinderella story about an underdog having a good season. This is a nation that has been told in almost every language, by almost every institution, for almost half a century, that it does not get to have nice things, that it is a cautionary tale, a headline about disaster, a footnote in someone else's story. And for 90 minutes on a football pitch, Haiti said otherwise. Today, we're going to go back, further than you might expect. We're going to walk through what this country survived to get here. We're going to sit inside a few living rooms on the night it happened. And we're going to talk about what it actually felt like for the people who lived every one of those 52 years without this moment. Let's begin. Chapter 1, 52 Years of Silence. In 1974, Haiti did the unthinkable. A small, under-resourced Caribbean nation qualified for the World Cup in West Germany. In their very first match, a striker named Emmanuel Sanon scored against Italy, ending legendary goalkeeper Dino Zoff's record shutout streak. Haiti didn't advance out of the group, but that was never really the point. The point was that they arrived. The world watched. And an entire nation believed this was the beginning of something. It wasn't. What followed instead was silence. Not the absence of sound. Haiti has never been a quiet country, but the absence of this. The absence of seeing the flag on that stage, of hearing the anthem before a World Cup match, of a child turning to their parent and asking, "Is that us?" and hearing yes, hearing 5 years became 10, 10 became 20, 20 became 30, then 40, then 50. A person born the year Haiti qualified for that 1974 tournament would have to live past their 50th birthday before they saw it happen again. They would graduate, marry, bury parents, maybe become grandparents themselves. And through every one of those milestones, the thing their own father told them about, the night Haiti played Italy, would remain just that. A story, something secondhand, something they had to take on faith. That is what 52 years of silence actually costs a people. Not just missed tournaments, missed inheritance. An entire generation grew up with no living memory of their country on that stage. Only the borrowed memory of someone else's. And that's before we even talk about what else those 52 years contained. Connect those two dates, 1804 and 2026. Independence and qualification. Two moments, 2 centuries apart, where Haiti did something the world did not expect and did not particularly want to make easy. Chapter 2, Everything Haiti Survived. Here is where I need you to understand something about Haiti that the rest of the world rarely sits with. This country did not simply fail to qualify for 4 decades because of bad luck on the pitch. It spent 4 decades surviving conditions that would have ended most nations entirely. The long aftermath of the Duvalier dictatorships, decades of authoritarian rule that hollowed out institutions and left scars that didn't disappear when the regime finally did. Military coups that interrupted fragile attempts at democracy, sometimes more than once in the same decade. An international embargo in the 1990s that strangled an already struggling economy in the name of restoring order. The 2010 earthquake, a single afternoon that killed an estimated 200,000 people and flattened the capital, a wound this country is still healing from. A cholera epidemic that followed it, introduced into Haiti's water supply, killing thousands more in the years after the world had already stopped watching. The assassination of a sitting president in his own home in 2021. An event so destabilizing, it is still reshaping the country's politics today. Waves of gang violence that have displaced hundreds of thousands of people from their own neighborhoods. Mass migration, Haitians leaving by boat, by foot across borders, scattering into a diaspora now larger and more spread out than at almost any point in the nation's history. And threaded through almost all of it, one international intervention after another. Foreign troops, foreign aid missions, foreign oversight, each one promising stability, few of them delivering it on Haiti's own terms. How many nations could survive all of that? Not one of those things, all of them stacked across 2 generations and still field a team, still build a youth academy, still produce players, still believe every qualifying cycle that this might finally be the one. Haiti did not survive that list unscathed, but Haiti survived, not perfectly, not painlessly, survived. The team that walked onto that qualifying pitch did not leave that history at home. They carried every line of it with them. That is what was actually on the field that night. Not just 11 players, but 52 years of a country refusing to be written off. Chapter 3, 1804 to 2026, The Price of Freedom. Before we go further, I want to take you back, not to 1974. Further than that, back to 1804. Because if you want to understand why the world has never quite known what to do with Haiti, you have to start there. In 1804, Haiti became the first nation in modern history born from a successful uprising of enslaved people. Not a negotiated independence. Not a gift granted by an empire that decided it was time. The only uprising of its kind in the history of the world that succeeded in creating a free, independent nation. Out of every place where people resisted the institution of slavery, Haiti is the one place where that resistance won outright and built a country out of the victory. You would think that would be celebrated, studied, honored as one of the great achievements in human history. Instead, Haiti spent the better part of the next 2 centuries being made to pay for it. I'm going to ask you some questions now, and I'm not going to answer them for you because the questions are the point. How many nations have been punished economically and politically for the act of winning their own freedom? Within just over 2 decades of independence, Haiti was forced into an agreement to pay an enormous indemnity to its former colonizer, simply for the right to exist without the threat of invasion. That debt, carried for generations, pulled resources out of a young nation before it ever had the chance to build what other countries were given time to build undisturbed. Then came decades of diplomatic isolation, because powerful nations weren't eager to recognize a country built by formerly enslaved people as a legitimate equal. Then, in the early 20th century, nearly 2 decades of occupation by the United States, with American officials controlling Haiti's finances and government for the better part of a generation. I'm not telling you this to assign blame in a single sentence. This is historical politics, not partisan politics, and history is rarely simple. I'm telling you this because there is a pattern here worth noticing. How many nations have had their economy structured around debt before they were even a generation old? How many nations have been described primarily by their failures, while the conditions that produced those failures were written by someone else's hand? When the world calls Haiti the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, how often does that sentence come with the next sentence, the one that explains why? I'm not asking you to answer all of that today. I'm asking you to hold it. Because when you understand 1804, you understand why 2026 matters more than a football tournament. This is a country that has spent over 200 years being told, in one form or another, that it would pay a price for daring to be free. And in 2026, with all of that history still pressing on its back, it qualified anyway. Connect those two dates, 1804 and 2026, independence and qualification. 2 moments, 2 centuries apart, where Haiti did something the world did not expect and did not particularly want to make easy. Chapter 4, What Haiti Gave the World. Now, I told you to hold on to something from the last chapter, the question of what was taken from Haiti. I want to flip that question now, because there's a part of this history that almost never makes it into the textbooks, and it deserves to be heard before we go any further. Haiti did not just win its own freedom in 1804. It spent the years after actively working to help other people win theirs. Early in the 19th century, Haiti opened its doors to anyone of African descent fleeing slavery anywhere in the hemisphere, offering automatic citizenship and refuge, at a time when almost no other government on earth would have dreamed of making that offer. And when Simón Bolívar, the man who would go on to lead the independence movements of Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, was defeated, exiled, and nearly out of options, it was Haiti that took him in. The Haitian president at the time gave Bolívar ships, weapons, soldiers, and a printing press to restart his campaign. He asked for one thing in return, not money, not territory. He asked Bolívar to free the enslaved people in every territory he liberated. Bolívar agreed, and the independence movements that reshaped an entire continent carried quietly a Haitian condition at their foundation. And it didn't stop there. Historians studying the broader Atlantic world point to the Haitian Revolution itself as one of the events that accelerated the end of the legal slave trade. Not because empires suddenly developed a conscience, but because Haiti had just shown the world exactly what could happen when an enslaved population organized, armed itself, and refused to lose. Slave-holding governments spent the next several decades afraid of their own colonies hearing about Haiti. That fear shaped policy. That fear shaped law. A nation born out of revolt ended up quietly reshaping the politics of freedom for an entire hemisphere, whether the history books wanted to admit it or not. So when you hear people describe Haiti only as a nation that has needed saving, I want you to hold this next to it. Haiti has also been the one doing the saving. Quietly, rarely credited, almost never taught. This is part of the burden of history this show is named for. Not just the weight Haiti has carried, but the weight Haiti has lifted off the backs of others and gotten almost no recognition for in return. So when this team walks onto the field in 2026, They are not just carrying 200 years of debt and disaster. They are carrying 200 years of a country that gave more to the cause of human freedom than almost anyone has ever bothered to acknowledge. Chapter 5. The Haitian Child Who Never Saw It. Now, I want to bring this down from the level of history to the level of one person. Think about a child born in Haiti in 1980. By the time they're old enough to understand what a World Cup even is, their parents are already telling them about 1974 in the past tense, like a photograph from before they were born. Real, important, but borrowed. Now think about a child born in 1990 or 2000 or 2010, a child born into a Haiti already reeling from the earthquake, who has only ever known a country the rest of the world describes in headlines about crisis. That child grows up watching World Cup after World Cup on someone else's television, cheering for someone else's country, because their own has never, not once in their living memory, been on that screen. By the time these children become adults, by the time they have children of their own, an entire generation, maybe two, has lived a full human life without this experience. Not a disappointing experience. An absent one. You cannot miss what you've never had. You can only have heard about it secondhand from someone old enough to remember. So when I tell you Haiti qualified for the 2026 World Cup, understand what that actually means for most of the people celebrating it. For the majority of Haitians alive today, this is not a return. This is a first. The first time in their entire lives they will watch their own flag walk out onto that field. The first time they will hear that anthem played before a match that actually counts. The first time a parent gets to turn to their child, not tell a story about it, but point at a screen and say, "Look, that's us, right now." That is not nostalgia. That is a birth. Chapter 6. Scenes from One Night. History is made of nations, but it's lived by people. So, before we go any further, I want to take you somewhere we haven't been yet. Not the press box, not the historical record, the living room, the kitchen table, the phone call. Somewhere in Little Haiti, Miami, a woman in her 70s sits in front of her television. She has lived in this country for over 30 years, longer than she ever lived in the one she was born in. Around her shoulders is a Haitian flag, worn soft at the edges, the same one she carried at the bicentennial in 2004. She has not cried at a football match since she was a young woman. Tonight she does. Somewhere in Port-au-Prince, a boy who has never known a Haiti without instability, without checkpoints, without the sound of his mother's voice tightening on the phone when she talks about safety. That boy is watching Haiti play in a World Cup for the very first time in his life. He has no idea, not really, that his grandfather waited 52 years for this exact moment and almost didn't live to see it. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a man in his 40s picks up his phone before kickoff and calls his mother in Haiti. For once, for one single phone call, neither of them brings up the inflation, the gangs, the politics, the cousin trying to get a visa. For 90 minutes, a conversation between a Haitian son and his Haitian mother is just about football, just about pride, just about being, for once, simply happy at the same time. Somewhere in Montreal, in a basement apartment, a group of college students who grew up speaking Creole at home and English everywhere else gather around a single laptop screen because none of them can afford the subscription separately and none of them are willing to watch this moment alone. Somewhere in Paris, an older man who left Haiti as a teenager and hasn't been back in over a decade finds himself, without entirely meaning to, singing the national anthem under his breath. And for the first time, his French-born grandchildren ask him to teach them the words. None of these people know each other. They will probably never meet. But for 90 minutes on the same night, in different cities, in different languages, they were all doing the exact same thing, holding their breath for the same flag. And before I go any further, let me bring this one even closer to home. Let me tell you about my own family. The Roses, my family, left Haiti for the United States. And most of us have now lived longer in this country than we ever lived in the one we were born into, or the one our parents were born into. We are sisters, husbands, wives, nieces, nephews, and in-laws who came from entirely different countries and speak in entirely different accents at our own dinner table. And on the night Haiti played in this World Cup, we did what we always do for anything worth marking. We gathered and we made the bouillon. Not the everyday version, the real one, goat head bouillon. The soup nobody makes unless the day actually means something. The kitchen was loud the way it always is. Children running between rooms, adults arguing lovingly over who was sitting where. And then Haiti walked onto that field against Brazil, and for 90 minutes, the entire house went quiet in a way it almost never does. Before kickoff, when the anthem played, every single one of us stood. We stood the way you'd stand if you were actually on that field, straight, serious, voices raised, singing every word like we had something to prove. I looked around that room while we sang, and what I saw stopped me for a second. Physicians, nurse practitioners, healthcare executives, and ophthalmologists, engineers, nurse anesthetists, counselors, medical students still years from graduation. This is a family that came to this country to chase everything it had to offer and built careers most people would call the American dream without a second thought. And still, every one of us was standing in that living room, singing a Haitian anthem like our lives depended on it. In that moment, it didn't matter how many degrees were hanging on our walls, how many titles sat after our names, or how many years we had spent in America. For 3 minutes during that anthem, we were not executives, physicians, engineers, or students. We were Haitians. Haiti lost that match, and the youngest ones in that living room cried the uncomplicated tears of children who only understand the scoreboard. But the adults in that room didn't cry those same tears. Some of us didn't cry at all, because we had lived enough of this history to know the score was never really the point. What moved through that house instead was something closer to relief, something closer to pride, the kind of feeling that doesn't show up easily on a child's face because it takes decades of waiting to actually understand it. Haiti lost the match that night. My family did not lose a single thing that actually mattered to us. That is what this team gave people. Not just a result, a single night where an entire scattered nation, separated by oceans and decades of leaving, came back together in the only place left where all of them could still gather, in front of a screen, wearing the same colors, hoping for the same thing. Chapter 7. What the world gets wrong about Haiti. There are two Haitis in this story, and only one of them is the Haiti most of the world actually knows. The Haiti most of the world knows comes from headlines: earthquake, poverty, gang violence, political collapse, migrant crisis. That Haiti is real. I am not going to sit here and pretend the suffering in this country's headlines is exaggerated. It isn't. People are living through it right now, but it is not the whole Haiti. The Haiti that Haitians actually know is compa music spilling out of a window on a Sunday afternoon. It's a grandmother cooking for a house full of people who showed up uninvited because in this culture, you simply come. It's church on Sunday morning and a pickup match in the street that same afternoon. It's carnival, it's poetry, it's Creole, a language born out of resistance and still spoken with pride. It's a stubborn, defiant joy that exists right alongside the hardship, not despite it. The World Cup gave the rest of the world something it almost never offers Haiti, a reason to look at this country and see something other than a disaster. For a few weeks, the story isn't an earthquake or a headline about violence. The story is 11 men in blue and red, representing a nation that refuses to be reduced to its worst chapters. That is not a small thing. Representation on that stage is about who gets to be seen as fully human, fully complex, fully capable of triumph, not just survival. Chapter 9: Why Sports Actually Matter. I know there are people listening right now thinking, Dr. Rose, it's a game. Why are we treating this like a constitutional moment? Fair question. Ask an American why they still talk about a hockey game from 1980. The miracle on ice, more than 40 years later. Ask an Argentine why Diego Maradona is still spoken of less like an athlete and more like a piece of the national identity. Ask a Brazilian what Pelé means to that country decades after he last played. The answer is the same every time. Sports become the container for national memory. They become the shorthand a country uses to tell itself who it is, especially in moments that have nothing to do with sports at all. Haiti now has a new chapter in that story, not one that erases the coups, the earthquake, the assassination, the displacement. A chapter that sits alongside all of that and says, and still, we did this too. Future generations of Haitian children will not just inherit the story of 1974 secondhand anymore. They will inherit this. A memory that belongs to them directly, not borrowed from a grandparent. That is how nations heal, not by forgetting the hard chapters, but by writing new ones strong enough to stand next to them. Chapter 10: The Players Who Chose Haiti. There's something about this team that deserves its own chapter, something that gets lost if we only talk about coups and earthquakes and qualification matches. Many of these players didn't have to choose Haiti. Some were born and raised on the island, came up through whatever football infrastructure Haiti could provide, under-resourced, underfunded, but full of more raw talent than the rest of the world has ever bothered to notice. For them, playing for Haiti was never really a choice. It was simply home. But others were born somewhere else entirely. Born in France or the United States or Canada to Haitian parents who left looking for something steadier than what was available back home. Players like that grow up with options: dual citizenship, eligibility for richer, more established football federations, programs with better academies, bigger budgets, more international exposure, and a far easier road to a World Cup roster. And some of them looked at all of that and chose Haiti anyway. I want you to sit with what that decision actually means. It is one thing to represent the country you were born in because there was never another option. It is another thing entirely to be offered an easier path, a wealthier federation, a more stable program, a higher likelihood of simply qualifying and turn it down on purpose because some part of you needed to wear blue and red instead. That is not a footballing decision. That is an identity decision. That is a young man looking at a flag his parents carried across an ocean and deciding it still belongs to him, even though he's never lived under it. Deciding that the stories his grandmother told him at the dinner table mattered more than a smoother professional pathway. Deciding that being part of something 52 years in the making was worth more than the easier version of success. And when those players step off the plane in Haiti for a qualifying match, when they walk into a stadium where the crowd doesn't care whether your accent is Haitian Creole or Brooklyn English, whether you grew up on Delma or in the Bronx, something happens that no academy, no bigger paycheck, no wealthier federation could ever offer them. They get to be fully, uncomplicatedly Haitian in front of people who claim them completely, no explanation required. For players who have spent their whole lives being asked to clarify which side of a hyphen they belong to, that kind of unconditional claiming is its own kind of homecoming. Every single one of those players, the ones who never left and the ones who came back, is carrying a different version of the same truth. That Haiti, whatever the headlines say about it, is still worth choosing. Chapter 11, To les Grenadiers. I want to say something now directly to the players, to every man who put on that blue and red jersey and carried this country's name into a qualifying match. You may never fully understand what you actually gave people. You gave a 70-year-old grandmother in Jacmel a memory she thought she'd never get to have again. One she could finally place next to the story she's been telling since 1974, instead of in front of it as the only one she had. You gave a 40-year-old father in Brooklyn the chance to turn to his daughter, point at the screen and say, "This is what I've been talking about your whole life," and for the first time, actually mean it in the present tense. You gave a generation of young Haitians born well after 1974, something they had genuinely never experienced, not a memory revived, a memory created. You gave an entire nation battered by everything we've talked about today permission to do something it hasn't always been allowed to do without guilt, dream in public together. You gave my family that night the roses gathered around a kitchen that smelled like bouillon, standing for an anthem like we were the ones about to walk onto that field instead of watching it from a living room in America. You gave us something we didn't even realize we were waiting for. For 90 minutes, nobody was thinking about work. Nobody was thinking about bills, deadlines, politics, or everything happening back home. We were just Haitians. 3 generations standing shoulder to shoulder, singing the same anthem, holding our breath for the same flag. Haiti lost the match that night, but my family walked away feeling like we had gained something we didn't know was missing. And I suspect we weren't the only family who felt that way. Whatever happens once the tournament begins, win or lose, advance or go home, none of that changes what you have already done. You brought Haiti back. Chapter 12, Letter to Haiti. I want to close with something different, not analysis, not history, a letter. Dear Haiti, they said you were finished. They said you were broken beyond repair. They said the disasters would define you forever, that the instability was permanent, that there was no coming back from any of it. They measured you by your earthquakes. They measured you by your poverty. They measured you by your headlines. Written by people who flew in for a week and flew back out, having seen almost nothing of who you actually are. But they never measured your people. They never measured the mother working 2 jobs in Miami, sending half of every paycheck home to a family she hasn't held in years. They never measured the teacher standing in front of a classroom with no books, no supplies, and somehow still a lesson plan. They never measured the nurse who stayed when the hospital had nothing left to offer but her own hands. They never measured the farmer who replanted after the storm took everything, because what else was there to do but plant again? They never measured the mechanic, the seamstress, the tap-tap driver, the student studying by a single light bulb because the power went out again and the exam is tomorrow. They never measured the children kicking a ball through dusty, cratered streets with no real field, no real goals, no real equipment, just the game itself and the dream that came free with it. They never measured your music, your poetry, your creole, your carnival, your stubborn, defiant joy that has never once asked anyone's permission to exist. They never measured your heart. In Haiti, This is the part I need you to hear most of all. They were never going to find it by counting your disasters. You can't put what you actually are into a sentence that starts with the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, because that sentence was never built to hold you. It was built to explain you away. But on this night, for 90 minutes, the world didn't get to explain you away. The world had to watch you, had to hear your anthem, had to see your flag, had to reckon, even if only for one match, with the fact that everything they thought they knew about you was incomplete. You were never finished. You were never broken beyond repair. You were just waiting for the world to catch up to what your own people already knew. Respectfully, Dr. Rose, Final 13, the real victory. So let's be honest one more time about what the real victory here actually is. It was never going to be a trophy. It was never really about how far this team advances once the tournament begins, or who they're drawn against, or what the final score ends up being against a stronger, wealthier footballing nation. The real victory already happened. 52 years ago, Haiti walked onto the world's biggest stage for the very first time. And then, almost as quickly as it opened, the door closed. For half a century, people wondered if it would ever open again. Generations were born into that silence. Generations grew old inside it. Some did not live to see it end. Empires changed, governments changed in Haiti and far beyond it. The world itself changed in ways the players who walked onto that field in 1974 could never have predicted. But through every single one of those changes, Haiti kept knocking. And in 2026, the door finally opened. Not because someone invited Haiti back in out of kindness. Not because someone felt sorry for a nation that has suffered enough to deserve a moment of grace. Not because Haiti was owed anything by anyone. Haiti earned it on the field against real opponents, carrying 200 years of history that most of the players on the other side of the pitch will never have to think about for a single second of their own lives. And for one beautiful night, the entire world had no choice but to stop and watch and listen to an anthem it had not heard in this context for 52 years. We are still here. We were always still here. Let that line sit alone before the final beat. This has been Burden of History. I'm Dr. Rose. If this episode moved you, if it made you think differently about what's actually happening when you watch this team take the field, share it with someone. Send it to your mother, your cousin, the friend who's been counting down to this tournament since qualification. Because this story deserves more than a highlight reel. It deserves to be understood. Until next time, keep asking why. Keep asking what it cost. And never let anyone tell you a nation's whole story in a single headline. Burden of History is produced and edited by Clay Ann, with more love than deadlines, if we're being honest. And before I let you go, I want you to know this episode wasn't made because Haiti was trending or because a World Cup made it convenient. It was made because this is my country. Because somewhere in my own family's history is every chapter we talked about today, the silence, the survival, and now, finally, the pride. This show exists because Haiti deserves to be talked about with the same care, the same seriousness, and the same love that any nation's history deserves. Not just when the headlines allow it. I'm Dr. Rose. This has been Burden of History. Honor, respect.